This week in the O.J. Simpson trial, the defense gets to work. They have a full slate of 21 witnesses. The jury hears from O.J. Simpson's family about what it was like inside his Rockingham estate the day after the murders. I'm Roger Cossack, and this is OJ25.
Morning, ladies and gentlemen. See everybody's well. At this point, Mr. Cochran, you may call the defense's first witness.
Thank you very kindly, Your Honor. Good morning, Your Honor. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Your Honor, the first witness that the defense will call is Miss Arnell Simpson.
All right, Ms. Simpson, would you come forward, please?
Good morning, Miss Simpson.
Good morning.
Miss Simpson, are you acquainted with the gentleman at the end of counsel table there, Mr. O.J. Simpson?
Yes, I am.
And how are you acquainted with him?
I'm his daughter.
Your dad would travel a lot, even when there was no football season, is that correct?
Yes.
Let's talk a little bit about your dad's traveling habits as you knew them. And we're talking now for the period after January of 1994. Have you ever been around when your dad was getting ready to leave for a trip?
Yes. There's always been an ongoing joke within the family that we'd always say, Dad, you have to get ready. And he'd always say, I'll get ready before you will be. And I would always prepare an hour before, and he'll get dressed in the last 15 minutes before we would have to leave. He's done this for years.
I'd like to shift our attention now. There come a time that you were awakened on the morning hours of June 13th, 1994.
Yes, by two gentlemen knocking at my door.
And these gentlemen knocking at your door, what did they say, if you recall?
They had told me that they needed to get in touch with my father and if I knew where he was.
All right, and what did you say in response to that?
I said that he wasn't home, but I didn't know where he was, but I knew how to get in touch with him.
What did he say to you?
He had told me that Nicole, that I know a Nicole Simpson, and I said yes, and he said that she had been murdered and that there was somebody else with her. Basically, I was just shocked. I couldn't believe it. I didn't know what to do.
You heard what the detective said, is that correct, ma'am?
Yes.
And at some point during that conversation, did you have occasion to speak to your dad, Mr. O.J. Simpson?
Yes.
How did that happen?
The phone was passed over to me, and my father had asked me what was going on, and I said, Dad, Nicole is dead. She's not here with us anymore.
They called him, and he came right back. Here's a guy that, if he had been guilty, I think he would, somebody, if he had done, he would have ran.
How did he sound to you at that point?
Very upset, emotional, confused.
Had you ever, at any time in your then 25 years, heard your father sound like that?
No.
Before you came back to the house at 5:30 or 6 o'clock in the evening, had you become aware that your dad was back in town?
Yes.
Did you have occasion that day or that afternoon to have still another conversation with your dad before you went back to Rockingham?
Yes.
During that conversation, again, you can't tell us about the content of that conversation, but with regard to his demeanor, can you describe how he appeared to you as you talked to him on the phone during this conversation?
He was very quiet, just still upset, but just there weren't a lot of words said on his part, but on my part, he was just very emotional.
All right. Had you ever seen him so emotional before?
No.
In conversation?
Never.
I mean, he's upset because this is a woman that had been his wife. This is the mother of his children. He had always cared about Nicole, even though she used to push his buttons and, but he still loved her.
When you got in there in the TV room, which you previously described, would you describe for the jury again whom you saw there?
I saw my father, I saw my grandmother, my Aunt Shirley, and some of my dad's friends.
This is the first time you saw your dad, is that right, that day?
Yes.
You describe for the jury how your dad appeared to you when you saw him.
He was very emotionless. He was numb. He was quiet, just sitting on the couch. He was holding my grandmother's hand. I walked over to him and I hugged him and I asked him if he was okay. And he just kind of looked at me and I was just trying to comfort him because I didn't know what else to do. He went over to the house to help her one day with the kids and to bring her some soup and medicine, see if she was okay.
All right, and this was during the period of time after they had broken up and while she was sick, is that correct?
Yes.
Nicole told me she was sick. And then she goes, "You're not gonna believe this." I said, "What?" She goes, "OJ made me some chicken soup." And I went, "Really?" And she goes, "Yeah." She goes, "He made him, brought it by." And I was like, "Oh, how nice."
She would come over in the mornings, sometimes to let the kids swim. Sometimes I'd walk outside, she'd be out laying out, and the kids would be in the pool, or I'd come inside the house, and she'd be in the kitchen.
This time frame then that you've described where you would take clothes over to the Bundy location would have been in the summer of 93, and that was a time when your dad was again going out with or dating Miss Nicole Brown Simpson, is that right?
Yes.
And did they continue to date, if you will, from the time you've talked to us about in April or May throughout 93 into 94?
Yes.
With regard to the Bronco, what family members, if any, would drive this Bronco vehicle?
Myself, my brother, AC, Nicole, my father.
Do you know why he stopped playing tennis?
Yes, due to his knees and wrists, his arthritis.
Ever seen your father wear a dark blue cotton lac sweatsuit at any point?
No.
You did not see what Mr. Simpson was wearing on the night of June the 12th when he went with Cato to McDonald's, did you?
No.
And at 10 o'clock p.m. on the night of June the 12th, were you at a movie?
Yes.
Okay. You did not see the Bronco at 10 o'clock at night, is that correct? On the night of June the 12th.
I don't recall.
And you did not see Mr. Simpson between 10 and 11 o'clock at night on June the 12th, is that correct?
Yes.
All right, next witness.
I walk my dogs at 10 o'clock.
Next witness.
Danny Mandel.
Next witness.
I never heard any barking at all.
Do you remember seeing Ron Shipp there?
Yes.
And I want you to describe for the court and jury, did you know Ron Shipp before this time?
Yes.
When you saw him, what was he doing, if anything?
He was sitting at the bar.
Was he doing anything at the bar while sitting there?
Yes.
What was that?
He was having a drink.
So this is what they're gonna do. You know, they're gonna rip me up, and I was sitting there going, wow, you know, so they're gonna, you know, go after, you know, my character.
You drink a lot, don't you?
I used to.
You've had a drinking problem, haven't you?
In the past, I have.
He was tired, and it was suggested that he go upstairs and lie down.
Did you see either one of your aunts go with him?
Yes.
Everybody was just sitting there watching the TVs, and that's when they started talking about OJ being a suspect, you know, and he started yelling at the TVs like, "That's bull, you know, that what's wrong with these people?"
The cellular phone that your dad normally had, that cellular phone go into one of his cars also?
Yes.
Which car did the cellular phone go into?
The Bronco.
And was it possible he could then take the cellular phone out of the Bronco and then take it with him when he took a trip to Chicago?
Yes.
Thank you. I have nothing further.
Next witness.
He was obviously a celebrity who everyone knew. But in this new paradigm, it was important, we thought, for his friends and kids and mother to talk about the OJ that they knew.
And Mr. Cochran, you may call your next witness.
Thank you very kindly, Your Honor. We'll next call Ms. Eunice Simpson to stand. Did you know a person by the name of Ron Shipp?
Yes, I did.
And do you know how long you'd known Ron Shipp before that date?
I say about 3 years. I met him at a Thanksgiving dinner.
What was he doing that day inside the house when you were sitting with OJ on the couch?
He was sitting at the bar.
You observed him at the bar?
Yes.
Did you see him drink anything at the bar?
He had a can in his hand.
You know what kind of can it was?
Appeared to be a beer can. He appeared to be space.
What was that word again?
Well, he...
Space, did you say?
I would say space.
All right. What do you
he
mean by...
didn't appear natural.
Did you ever see Ron Shipp up in your brother's bedroom?
Yes, I did.
Was anyone else up there when he was there?
Yes, my sister.
Who else was
I'm
there?
sorry. My sister Shirley.
And yourself?
Yes.
And your brother?
Yes.
And for how long a period of time was Mr. Shipp there?
A couple of minutes.
To your knowledge, was your brother ever alone with Mr. Shipp?
No, sir.
Our next witness is Mrs. Shirley Baker.
All right, Mrs. Baker.
Did you see a man by the name of Ron Shipp testify?
Yes, I did.
And did you hear his testimony?
Yes, I did.
He kind of jokingly just said, you know, to be honest, Ship, that's what he called me, Ship. He said, I've had some dreams of killing her.
Did he say how many dreams he'd had of killing her?
No, he did not.
Did he say it was more than one?
He just said dreams, plural.
Of course, I didn't know for sure, but I just, in my mind, I was like, it just didn't look good.
During the time that you were with your brother sitting on the couch, did you ever see Ron Shipp talk privately to your brother?
No.
During the time you went upstairs to the bedroom with your brother, did you ever see Ron Shipp come up and talk privately to your brother?
Ron Shipp did come up to the bedroom. I was in the bedroom. I was sitting on the couch. The telephone was ringing, and OJ had just closed his eyes for a moment. And when the telephone rung, OJ started to shake. And I asked Ron, I said, Ron, is there any way that you can turn that phone off or unplug the phone? He walked around the side of the bed and he unplugged the phone. And it seemed to me like I could still hear the phone ringing. So he took the phone and I think he put it in the nightstand. He said a few words to me and then he left the room and he never returned to that room again.
Are you absolutely certain that you can tell this jury that at no time other than regarding unplugging the telephone was there any private conversation between Mr. Shipp and your brother?
I'm absolutely sure.
Thank you.
Yes, I am.
Thank you. OJ is saying, how can people believe I would do this? How can they think this of me? And can you describe what his mood and demeanor was like when you first saw him?
He was devastated. He was crying. He was sad. He was in disbelief. He was in shock.
How would you describe his mood?
What I would say is that he was out of it. You know, he was shocked, dazed. He was just there.
I know that his family absolutely believed in his innocence. And so when you're dealing with a client whose family trusts and believes in their beloved relative's innocence and that they're in jail and are looking to possibly spend the rest of their life, I mean, it's a lot.
We were all in shock. Nicole had been a part of our family for 17 years, and we couldn't believe what was going on, and we didn't know what was going on because we were only hearing bits and pieces from the newspaper and everything on the TV. We had no idea what had happened, and we were all devastated.
We were really afraid that he was going to kill himself. You know, because like I say, in those 5 days, he just went down a very dark rabbit hole.
Next witness.
My name is Francesca Harmon.
Next witness.
It was exceptionally quiet.
Next witness.
I designed 3 of his offices.
All right, next witness.
We were participating in a corporate golf tournament.
Mr. Shapiro, next witness, please.
At some point in time, have you become acquainted with my client, Mr. O.J. Simpson?
Yes.
And for how long have you been acquainted with him?
Well, I met OJ about in 1980, I think.
Have you had an occasion to observe his demeanor?
Yes, at many different events and functions.
And when was the last time you saw him in person prior to today?
June 11th, 1994.
How do you know that date and where was it?
How could I not know that date? It was at a $25,000 dinner party for the Sheba Medical Center.
And did you see him in the accompaniment of anyone?
He was with Paula.
This is the time when OJ was dating Paula, and I honestly have to say he was happy. He was actually happy.
When OJ walked in, I had already been there. And he and Paula walked in, and he saw me standing there, and I waved to him. And he left Paula standing on the step, and he came towards me, and he put his arms around me, and he said, "Oh, you look..."
All right, next question.
What was his mood like?
Well, he was wonderful. He was kind. I asked him to take a picture. He couldn't have been nicer to everybody there. I asked him how Nicole was, and he said, "She's fine." And there was a photographer standing over there, and I said, "Would you mind taking these pictures? It would really be wonderful, and I know they would appreciate it." And OJ said, "Not at all, Carol."
I was so angry at the celebrity and how free people were just to refer to the killer as if he was their buddy. It just pissed me off. So he's a killer. That's what he is.
And each time that you saw the defendant, you saw him at different events.
Yes.
You saw him in public.
Yes.
You didn't see him at home, did you?
No.
You didn't see him at home when he was married to Nicole Brown, did you?
Not at their home, but I saw them together, yes.
Okay. How about the night of the 12th? Did you see the defendant around 10:20 on the night of the 12th?
No, I did not.
Did you speak to him at that time?
No, I did not.
You don't know where he was at that time?
No, I do not.
Did you see any cuts on his hands?
No.
Did you see any cuts or bruises on his hands?
No.
Did you notice anything unusual about either his left or right hand?
I did not notice anything unusual.
Did you see his left middle finger while he was signing the autograph?
No.
I viewed Mr. Simpson's hand specifically looking for a championship ring.
The night of Nicole Brown and Ron Goldman's murders, O.J. Simpson takes a red-eye flight to Chicago. As OJ25 continues, the jury hears from witnesses who saw the former football great on that flight.
All right, next witness.
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you may give?
I currently work for full-time for Southern Cal Gas, and I work part-time for Network Courier.
And Network Courier is a delivery service?
Yes, sir.
What went through my mind is that if ultimately it came to pass that Simpson would be a suspect, the same issues of celebrity and preset opinions about celebrated figures was going to come into play, much like with Michael Jackson.
Were you at the airport on June the 12th, 1994 as a courier?
Yes.
And why is that date important to you?
That was the night that we met or saw O.J. Simpson at the airport and learned the next day that his ex-wife had been murdered.
We had a demeanor defense where his whole attitude that night, when he got into the limousine, onto the airplane, into the limousine in Chicago, into the hotel, was calm, jovial. O.J. is a very jovial, garrulous person.
About what time was it that you saw Mr. Simpson get out of the limousine at the airport?
Between 11:20 and 11:25. Well, as he got out, I said, "Hey, what's up, O.J.?" And then he walked to the back of the limo.
Did he respond at all to you?
Yes, he did.
What did he respond?
He said, "Hey, what's happening?"
To your knowledge, did your friend say anything to Mr. Simpson?
He asked him, could he get an autograph?
Did you say something to Mike Norris at that point?
I don't think so. I think Mike said he said, "Hey, what's up, OJ?" or something like that.
And when you approached him, what'd you say to him?
I said, "Hey, Juice, could I get an autograph?"
And when you said that to him, what did he say, if anything?
He said, "Sure, just let me get my luggage situated," or something to that effect.
And this is the original autograph that Mr. Simpson signed for you on that night?
Yes.
And it says, O.J. Simpson, peace to you?
Yes.
And do you want to keep this autograph?
Sure.
It didn't matter who you were, just the man on the street. When you walked up to him, he just made you feel like you were somebody because, how you doing? Man, it's great to meet you. Thank you very much. You walked away thinking, wow, OJ said hello to me.
As you observed Mr. Simpson, did you have occasion to look at his hands?
Yeah, I noticed how big his hands were.
And did you see any cuts or bruises on his hands?
No.
You saw him, and can you describe for us, if you remember, how he wrote that autograph, what hand he wrote it with, and whether he used both hands or not?
I think he held it with his left hand and signed with his right.
He had it in his left hand.
And he signed with his right.
Yeah.
So his left hand was underneath, his left middle finger at least was underneath the pad of paper, correct?
I couldn't tell you that.
Did you see his left middle finger while he was signing the autograph?
No.
Did he seem to have any trouble grasping the ink pen?
No.
Did the defendant have a cut on his left hand?
No, I didn't see one.
You didn't see any blood on the defendant?
No.
You didn't see any blood on the back of his left hand?
No.
How did he look to you? Can you describe that to the jury?
He looked, naturally he was dressed real nice, had on like a stonewash type denim outfit, trying to look kind of young. He was trying to be cool,
And would you describe his demeanor to the jury?
He just was like smooth, hey, just walking through like, I'm OJ.
Did he?
I don't think I've ever seen O.J. Simpson mad. The whole time I've known him. I've known him since I was 16 years old. So, and to be around him, and I'm just being honest, to be around him was a blast.
Now, during the period that you saw O.J. Simpson, did you observe his hands?
Yes.
Did you see any cuts on his hands?
No.
See any Band-Aids on his hands?
No.
See any bruises on his face?
No.
Did he appear to be sweating?
No.
You didn't see him at 10 o'clock, correct?
No, I didn't.
And you didn't see him at 10:15?
No.
Not at 10:30?
No.
And not at 11 o'clock?
No.
So you don't know what he looked like when he got into the limousine at around 11 or 11:10?
No.
You saw him get a bag out of the trunk of the limousine?
I didn't see him get it out.
He reached into it?
No, the bag was already out on the ground.
Okay. Can you describe that bag for us, sir?
It was black.
Can you show us with your hands how big it was?
I couldn't tell you exactly how big it was.
Can you describe for us the bags that you did see him with?
There was a golf bag. The bag that he had, had in the back of the limo, he put over his shoulder, and he carried an athletic bag.
Okay, and the bag that he carried over his shoulder, what kind of bag was that, sir?
It was a black bag.
You want to know where the knife is, the bloody shoes? It's in one of two landfills in L.A., because that's who picks up the trash at LAX.
Is there a trash can anywhere near your stand where you work?
Yes, just to the left of it.
Mr. Williams, you don't recall ever seeing Mr. Simpson anywhere near that trash can on June the 12th, do you, sir?
Yes, he was standing near the trash can.
Did you see him do anything with the trash can?
No, I didn't see him do anything with the trash can.
He was like kind of standing in between the sky cap and like where the door was.
And there's a trash can located between the door jamb and the sky cap station. Is that right?
I think there's a couple of them like on each side.
Did you see the defendant place anything on top of that trash can?
No.
You didn't see him place a bag on top of the trash can?
No.
All right, Mr. Gladden, thank you very much, sir. You're excused. All right, Mr. Cochran, your next witness, please.
Howard Bingham. Howard, H-O-W-A-R-D.
Mr. Bingham, sir, what is your occupation?
I am a photographer.
And are you a world-renowned photographer?
The world's greatest.
Sunday evening, June 12th, 1994. Did you have occasion to be at Los Angeles International Airport on that evening?
Yes, I did.
And did you have occasion to leave Los Angeles to go someplace that evening?
Yes.
And where were you going?
I was on the way to Chicago.
Did you have occasion to see someone else come on that flight?
Yes, I did.
After that? And who was that person?
It was Mr. O.J. Simpson. I walked up there and I tapped him on the shoulder. He looked around at me and said, "Hey, Bingham, how you doing?"
And did you notice anything unusual about either his left or right hand?
I did not notice anything unusual.
Did you see any cuts on either his left or right hand?
I don't think so, no.
Mr. Cochran just said he'd give Mr. Darden your book if I said no questions.
Thank you. I'll leave now.
It'll be very, very, very brief, sir. All right, so you and the defendant are not close personal friends. Would that be a fair statement?
Right.
You're acquaintances, correct?
Yes.
And if there was some subtle difference in the way he was acting on that particular night, you would not detect it. Would that be a fair statement?
I don't know. I just know how he was with me.
You don't know what he was feeling inside, do you, sir?
I'm not a psychiatrist or a psychologist.
Thank you very much, Mr. King.
Thank you.
He was very desperate. He sounded very upset.
Raise your right hand, please. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you may give
On June 12th of 1994, did you have occasion to board an American Airlines flight 668 from Los Angeles to Chicago?
That is correct.
And you saw Mr. Simpson in a short time after you did it?
Correct.
All right. And when you first saw him, did you recognize him?
Sure, immediately.
Can you describe for the jury his mood, how he appeared to you?
He was very pleasant, smiling. I noticed his clothing was very well pressed, looked very sharp. In fact, I was looking particularly just because of his celebrity from his Hertz commercials and the fact that he was so late on board. I was looking to see if he was sweating, and he looked absolutely normal.
Mr. Valerie, as you watched Mr. Simpson from this vantage point, did you have occasion to look at his face?
I sure did.
Did you see any bruises or cuts or abrasions on his face at that point?
None whatsoever.
Did you have occasion, from this vantage point you described for us, to look at Mr. Simpson's hands?
I viewed Mr. Simpson's hands specifically looking for a championship ring, given his fame as a professional football player. That was the motivation for my looking at his hands. I didn't see anything unusual, no Band-Aids, no large abrasions or anything to that effect.
Juror number 6 in the Simpson trial is Lon Cryer. His detailed notes and personal journal, over 600 pages in all, have been sitting in his garage since the trial, until now.
But I always said in my mind, if you could have told me exactly what really occurred, how he had that cut on his finger, it might have helped me determine maybe that he was more guilty than innocent at that point.
he had his garment bag over his right shoulder, which was the side I really couldn't see well. His left shoulder was to me, as we were going to be playing on the left side of the plane.
And was there a strap on that garment bag, if you recall?
Yes, it was over his shoulder.
Okay, what color was that bag?
It was a darker color. I didn't really see. That was the one that he stowed overhead.
All right, that was over the right shoulder. And then what about did you see any other bag?
Yeah, and then the second bag that he had with him in the seat, and he had that positioned over his shoulder, carrying it with the two straps in his hand, hanging over his back, and that was closest to me.
Why did you look at Mr. Simpson's hand later on in the flight?
I was looking specifically for a championship ring.
Did you know at that time that Mr. Simpson has never won an NFL championship?
I did not know at that time.
Did you look at the defendant's shoes as carefully as you looked at his face and his hair and his clothing?
Yes.
You looked at his feet?
I did.
You paid particular attention to the defendant's feet?
Yes, I did.
And why did you do that?
Because I noticed the shoes, and I noticed he wasn't wearing socks with the shoes. That's what my recollection of that evening was. It was just an observation along with all the other observations I made.
All right, Mr. Valerie, thank you very much, sir. You're excused. All right, we'll just stand over here next to the podium, sir. Face the clerk.
The defense did a masterful job of picking up the pace.
I do.
Mary Collins, 5 to 8 minutes.
The state took forever, witness after witness on the stand, that we're going to help you get through this thing.
I'm the chief financial officer.
Did you hear the wailing of a dog?
No, I did not. There wasn't a sound to be heard.
It's a masterful job because, again, it connects with that jury. Oh, somebody feels my pain as a juror. The way they sensed that they were ahead and they flew through the beginning of their case.
I stopped at Bundy.
It was almost eerie. It was so quiet.
Did you fly on the evening of June 12th, 1994?
Yes, sir, I did.
Where did you fly from and to?
Los Angeles to Chicago.
Did you at some point learn that one of the passengers on your aircraft was Mr. O.J. Simpson?
Yes, sir.
What, if anything, did you observe that he was doing?
Just looking out the window. If anything, I would characterize it as being pensive, just lost in thought. He came out of his seat in sort of a half crouch and extended his hand, and we shook hands, and I thanked him.
This is O.J. Simpson. He making movies. He was the TV personality. Everybody loved O.J. Simpson.
Without telling us what was said, did you at some point make a request to Mr. Simpson?
Yes, I did.
And what was that request?
I asked if he would sign my logbook.
And did he in fact do so?
Yes, sir, he did.
Would you just point them out on the page?
His signature and a peace to you comment underneath.
And what is the date of the logbook page that I'm holding?
It's 12 June of 94.
When you were seated next to Mr. Simpson that night, Captain, and he was writing in your book, did you see both of his hands?
Yes.
Did you see any bandages or injuries that caught your attention?
No, sir, I didn't register on that at all.
What do you mean when you say you didn't register at all?
Well, the question was, did I see his hands? And in order to shake his hands, hand him my logbook, and loan him a pen, I did have to look at his hands, yes.
Okay. Were you expecting to see a cut on his left hand?
No, sir.
Were you looking for a cut on his left hand?
No, I was not.
And you gave each other a shake?
Yes.
And that was a firm handshake, wasn't it?
It was a firm, warm handshake, yes.
Okay. And Mr. Simpson, the defendant here, he didn't grimace in pain when you shook his hand, did he?
No, sir.
All right, Captain, thank you very much.
Okay.
Jim, J-I-M. Merrill, M-E-R-R-I-L-L.
Is it the practice of Hertz Corporation to hold a function each year?
Yes, it is.
What sort of function is that?
We like to have golf outings once a year. Last year, I was asked to pick up Mr. Simpson at the airport when he flew in that morning.
Can you describe for me his demeanor when he came off of the airplane?
Very relaxed, looked a little tired, happy, friendly, cordial.
Was he carrying any luggage?
Yes, he was.
How many pieces?
He had 2 pieces.
Can you describe the 2 pieces for me, please?
He had a black garment bag and a black duffel bag.
During the entire time that you interacted with Mr. Simpson that morning, did you notice anything unusual about his hands?
No, I did not.
And then his whole demeanor changed as you would expect a person who didn't know it till he got the phone call saying his wife had been killed.
When Mr. Simpson called you at 8:25, can you say something about what his demeanor was?
He sounded very upset, confused, very frantic.
And did he have any request of you?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he wanted me to come pick him up as quickly as I could.
When he was talking to you, did you notice anything different in his voice?
Yes.
What did you notice?
It was cracking. He sounded like he was crying.
There was a time period in OJ's life when, by all accounts, even OJ's and everyone else's, they were broken up and he was still madly in love with her.
Did there come a time when you spoke with him again about the clubs?
Yes.
And during that conversation, did you give him the claim check for the bags, the claim check number for the bags to pick up in Los Angeles?
Yes.
Did you have an occasion to observe anything unusual about Mr. Simpson's hands?
Yes.
Sir, in that June 14th phone call in which the defendant apologized to you, you'd never met him before June the 13th, is that right?
That's correct.
You were not buddies.
No.
You didn't know him anything.
No.
He didn't know you anything.
Oh, no.
Right.
Apology was nice.
It was nice, but not expected, was it?
No.
You were pretty surprised by that, weren't you?
Yes.
And a man whose ex-wife has just been murdered calls to apologize to you for being impatient. Didn't that strike you as a little odd?
I admit it, Your Honor.
Overruled. Yes, I guess.
As someone who saw the defendant immediately before and immediately after the discovery of the murders, your testimony about his demeanor would be very important. Wouldn't you agree?
Overruled.
Yes.
I have nothing further.
Mr. Merrill, thank you very much, sir. You're excused. Thank you.
With the court's permission, we'd like to call Mr. Raymond Kilduff. At some time in the morning, did you see Mr. O.J. Simpson there?
Yes, I did.
Where was he when you first saw him?
Sitting outside on a bench. He was obviously distraught. Once I pulled up, his hands were in put his hands in his face.
Did you have an occasion to observe anything unusual about Mr. Simpson's hands?
Yes.
What did you observe?
When Mr. Simpson was sitting against the wall, it was very sunny. I could actually see into the bandage because it was loose and it was very bloody. I could see the entire gauze area covered in blood.
And the cut that you saw on the defendant's finger that day?
Yes.
You say there was a bandage on that cut?
Yes.
And the bandage was loose, wasn't it?
Yes.
And the bandage was so loose that you could see the cut?
Correct, I could see him.
The bag was not full, was it?
No.
In fact, the bag was relatively empty, wasn't it?
Yes.
As far as that bag that OJ was carrying, that was very well disposed of by other witnesses. It very clearly had nothing to do with anything connected with the murder. It was another piece of popcorn which is worth the size of the unpopped kernel, and the prosecution managed to pop and make it look like it amounted to something. They were unsuccessful.
Now, Mr. Partridge, what is your occupation?
I'm a lawyer.
Did you have occasion to be on a flight from Chicago to Los Angeles, American Airlines Flight 1691?
Yes, I did. Well, at first he seemed to be upset. He sighed heavily, and looked up, closed his eyes. During the course of the flight, he made quite a few phone calls. I also recall that he had a Louis Vuitton garment bag that was left in the first class section. I did see his hands, yes. I saw that there was a cut on the knuckle of his left hand. I thought the way he was behaving was very sincere. 2 days later, on the 15th, I made notes of what I could recall from the flight.
First call he made, you were able to hear who he was speaking to, didn't you?
I heard a name, yes.
And that name was?
I wasn't able to hear. I heard a name.
And the name was?
Skip.
Do you know whether he was the defendant's attorney back in June 13th of 1994?
I don't know. I have an understanding.
Okay, I'm going to show you page 6 of your notes.
Okay.
See if that refreshes your memory as to whether or not there was one call or more than one call to this person named Skip.
Okay. Yes, it does.
And how does that refresh your recollection?
Well, these are my notes made shortly after, and I refer to more than one call from someone named Skip.
Are you aware that the person Skip Taft that Mrs. Clark was asking you about was Mr. Simpson's longtime friend and business lawyer of 20-plus years? Are you aware of that?
I'm not aware of that.
You're still not aware of that, are you?
No.
May I ask to take you as my witness for this one question?
One question.
Tell us what he was wearing on his feet, sir.
He had black leather loafers.
What kind?
One question. That's two.
That's two. What kind?
They were sort of woven black leather loafers. The leather was woven.
Socks?
That's three. That's three. You'll never end.
No, it will. That's all I wanted to ask. The last question is
It's beyond the scope. I've allowed you to go beyond. We've established what he's had on his feet. All right, Mr. Partridge, thank you very much, sir. You're excused.
Thank you.
The People versus O.J. Simpson sees the weekend with the defense case moving ahead at lightning speed. Coming up, a rare win for the prosecution when a workout video with O.J. Simpson appears to show him in great physical shape just weeks before the murders.
Yeah, this is no competition here. This is just a workout for you to feel better. Think how good I'm gonna feel tomorrow.
That's next on OJ25. I'm Roger Cossack.